Welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast, the podcast that gives you immediate actions you can take to start seeing life-shifting results now. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast. This is Mark Cardone.
And Theron Feidt.
So every so often an episode comes up, and this is funny because, this episode was like your idea, like you came up with it, yet it was something that I'm literally, like I was really focused on last week, so I think it's funny when that happens, when you have
Yeah.
something go into your head that's something you're working on, it gives you that like confirmation you're on the right path. So if you're listening
Right.
to this podcast right now, we're talking about prioritization. We're talking about the power of no, the word no. And I know I almost said it, protecting your eyes, but protecting your yes. So making sure that we're prioritizing, we're using that no so that we can say yes to the things that are important.
So, I mean, we all know we have a finite amount of time, obviously, on this earth, but specifically day to day, we all have the same amount. Now, we can make more time, in air quotes, by being more productive. And that's really what we're talking about. So many people, and I'm sure this includes the two of us at many times in our life, have wasted. You look back, you're like, why did I spend so much time on my phone? Why did I uh, sleep so long? Why did I do this? There's a lot of things throughout your life you can think, I kind of waste your time, especially as you get older. You look, I don't know why I spent so much time on that.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're doing is we're trying to jumpstart and give you some perspective on some things. And this is this is something we're both very busy. We both have a lot going on. We run businesses, we have families, we're active with our family. We're not just focused solely on our business. We're both big with our family. So this is super important to get this concept down. That's why I think this podcast is good for everybody. This can help everybody, not just business people, but I think more importantly, it can help you in your personal life.
100%. Because I really think a lot of people listen to this podcast, they have families, they have careers, they have, financial obligations, they have, fitness goals, they have so many things. And I always think about like the Franklin Covey compass where you used to write down your
Yeah.
goals and then like that one big rock for the week.
Yep.
I think there's so many people listening to this podcast, who, feel this sense of just a lot going on. And
Yeah.
and exactly what you said, which I loved, was when you said, you look back and say, why did I waste so much time on that stuff? Or why
Yeah.
didn't I do this?
Yeah.
So let's get into this, because actually, I mean, step one, and I think, people hear the first step, and I'm going to tell you steps 2 and 3 are really important, but the first step is always knowing where you're coming from.
Yeah.
It's knowing what the stuff is, right? So
Yeah.
conducting, what we're going to call a resistance audit,
Hmm.
is something that sounds onerous, but it doesn't take that line. But to find room for great, right? To find room for the things that you want to do, first you have to find out where the good is taking your time away, like where those things are leaking. So looking
Yeah.
at your last 7 days,
Yep.
just looking at your calendar, highlighting the things that were important, and then just kind of noticing the things that didn't move the needle towards your goals.
Right. Right. And the next part of this is, as you alluded to it a little bit, is identify and actually from your list circle the things that we call them obligation leaks. So things that out of a sense of guilt or just being polite that you just say yes to.
Yeah.
And not that you shouldn't have any of those things, right? But oftentimes, and the problem is there's people in this world that will take advantage of people that always say yes.
Hmm.
And if you're one of those people that always say yes, this podcast is for you. We're here to we're here to help you. Um, but getting back to this is there's always some things as you're going through that you're like, geez, why am I doing this? I don't like it. It's not helping me at all. It's not moving the needle in any direction. I had an old mentor that said, profit and pleasure. If it doesn't bring you one of those things, don't do it. Obviously there's more to it than that. I don't think
Yeah.
those are the only two things now, but that gave me a good base of at least a decision-making process of my time. If I didn't like it, or if I didn't like it, but I was making money at it, that was fine too, especially when you're young. But that's kind of what this is talking about is obligations, especially if you've done them for so long. You're like, why am I still doing that? That's the next step of that.
Yeah. And then, I think, a big part of that is calculating the cost too, is looking at, how much time is it? You know what I mean? Because I think we comfortably look at the calendar and say, okay, well, we've got 24 hours. I work 8, that leaves me
Yep.
16. I sleep 7, that leaves me 9, and then that 9,
Yep.
I mean, 9 hours a day is a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of
Yep.
course you got to factor in eating, getting ready,
Right.
hopefully you going for a walk or doing some push-ups, but the time is there. So looking at
Yep.
how much kind of bleed you have, could
Yep.
make that 9 hours, 15 hours, or could make it 10 hours. But just being aware of how much extra time you're just throwing away.
Yep. Definitely. Now I gotta give you step two, at least the title of it,
Uh,
because this is you. This is on brand. I do not want to take this joy from you. So if you want to
this
start part two.
so excited about this one. We made a filter called hell yeah or no. Right.
Yep.
And I love that it's not like hell yeah or hell no. It's just hell yeah. Like I'm into this, right? There's not that
Yeah.
mid like, I guess I could do it. It's you know what? I'm either all in, right? Like a new request comes in on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a 9 or better, right? I'm a 9 or better. I want to do it. And if it's not that, then it's no. I'm doing the things I'm excited about.
Yep. Absolutely. So, and then the next part of this is the trade-off check.
Hmm.
So before saying yes to yourself, um, is this a great thing? Are you being forced to do this? Remember, saying yes, there's a cost to that. Now, that doesn't mean when I say there's a cost to that, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a negative cost, right? If you spend time with your family instead of working, well, what's the cost of that? Well, you potentially might make less money. However, I would argue that probably spending time with your family not only is it good for you health wise, but also I think you're going to make more money in the long run because you're going to be happier and you're going to be more supportive at home and supported at home. So that having that in there is the trade-off check, but don't think at one level trade-off check. Think two or three levels down the road what it really means.
Yeah, and I think, just to really hit on this one, there's going to be people listening who say, "Well, I'm just not excited about any of it." Like I
Yeah,
don't like my job.
right.
Like it's a lot of stress. When I go home, things like that. To that, I say, like you got to rewind and go back to the gratitude episodes. You know what I mean? Because I think there's always things we
Hmm.
can be excited about. I think you can be excited about things that you aren't excited about. I think you can find excitement in things, but
Right.
I think initial reaction on this, if you hear something and you're excited, you should do it.
Yeah.
Definitely look at the trade-offs though, because I can't tell you how many times, like someone's asked me to go to a thing and I've been like, I don't really want to.
Yeah.
But then you think about the bigger picture and you say, okay, yeah, but this is going to help them.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
big part of my goals. And I think a skill that I've developed over time that I actually got hit with from someone else is that like neutral no,
Oh
the
yeah. Yep.
ability to say no without being abrasive. Because I think that's a lot of it. I think for people like me, if someone says, "Hey, Mark, do you want to go grab a cup of coffee?" It's not that I don't want to say yes, but if I'm busy, I'll say yes just because I don't want to say no.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what I've done is, sometimes I'll just say, "Hey, I'm booked out for about 2 weeks. Why don't you hook up with me in 2 weeks and we'll revisit?" And then they forget, and and then it kind of, glances off until later. But finding ways to say no in a good way is important.
Yeah, and just to put a pin in that, like I think with me, when I say no, I try to be as kind as I can, unless
Yeah.
it's a cold call or a spam call, then then you're gonna feel my wrath, just because you bothered me and I didn't ask for it. But if you're like sincerely, I don't want to burn the relationship. Um, I'm going to be neutral with it and say, hey, listen, I think it's a great idea, but it's just not the good time for me. That way,
Yeah.
in the future, especially if it's something that I think is a good idea, it just doesn't fit my schedule or doesn't fit whatever. I don't want to say no forever, and I want to leave the door open. So I think that neutral no is such a great skill to attain for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So moving on to action step number three. So step number three is creating protection zones, and this is something that I did early on in my career, and I think it really helped me a lot. And it's as simple as it sounds. So the first part is blocking time that you do your important work, your deep work, your thinking, your writing. It could be an everyday thing. Like for me, I love to get up early. No one else in the house is up. No one's bothering me. Sometimes I stay at the house. Sometimes I go into the dojo and do it. And it could be at least an hour. Sometimes it's 3 hours, depending on the day. And that zone is really non-negotiable. Now, of course, things have come up. You have an emergency, something happens. Yes, it's not nothing is or should be 100%, right? It's kind of like our recording. Our recording is every week. Now, is it every single week of the year? No, we talked about it before. It's probably like 48, maybe 45 times a year. So we're missing a very small percentage. However, neither of us schedule something on purpose during this time.
Right.
We'll schedule all around it unless we absolutely can't can't help it.
And I think that's a great point because like it's in my calendar, from X time to X time I'm podcasting. Like I
Right,
get home,
ongoing. Yep.
right, and I get home, and the first thing Joyce asks is, are you hopping on your podcast right now? Because
Yeah,
she
she
knows,
knows.
right? And like if I'm scheduling a doctor's appointment, when I look at my calendar, I know that I can't do it right then. So, the
Right.
4 weeks we miss, it's usually like, hey, I'm sick. Hey,
Yeah.
the bus is, I'm not going to
Right.
make it on time. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think that's such a great, blocking is so important.
Yep.
Um, like this is one of my big things is dawdle time because I'm a
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
victim of dawdle time. And it's not intentional, but what I'll do is like I'll do a task and then I'll check, I'll hop on Facebook for a minute to, do something, and then I'll get lost in there for 5 minutes. And then, and I'm very regimented with how much time I spend on social media, but a couple minutes here, a couple minutes there really racks up. So I've had to
Hmm.
put measures in place so that when I'm cold calling, I'm making those calls in a row, and
Right.
I'm really trying to eliminate those little distractions that aren't moving the needle that I do in between the things that I do.
Right. Yep. And the last part of this step is make sure people know about your boundaries, know about
Mhm.
your time that you need. And you mentioned that, um, and I think that's important. You don't have to tell everybody, obviously, but the people that can get you at any time, your family. Like if one of my kids calls me, I mean, they pretty much know now. Sometimes they forget that I'm teaching certain classes, but I'll pick up the phone if they call me because they don't call me usually during the night, right? It'll be during the day, so it's usually important. However, sometimes it's not. It's I mean,
Right.
it's always important, but you know what I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
it's important that people in your life know, hey, this is my time. Of course, if it's an emergency, contact me. If not, can it wait? If you want to tell me about your day, I do want to hear about your day, but do you need to tell me now or
Not
is
5 minutes
30
into a wipeout
minutes from
class.
now still okay? Right? It's like it's not an urgent thing. It's urgent so and that takes a little time and depending on who you have in your life and how their personality is, it's a little negotiation sometimes with it. But the point is once you make the time, like we said, that's like the first
Yeah.
part of this step is make sure people know about it, and then is reinforced. And then also for you, it's the habit part. You get in the habit of making sure that you're doing it every day.
Yeah.
This podcast wouldn't have happened. We're not in our 11th year of podcasting because we haphazardly record every once in a while when we feel like it. It's a scheduled thing, like we said, when we
Yeah.
put it as a priority to make it happen.
And touching on the boundaries, the broadcasting the boundaries, I think it's fun because like Tuesdays are, which is when we record, are a day when I have very like regimented meetings. Like my team meeting is
Yeah.
on Tuesdays. And they're from specific times. And sometimes what will happen is people will book things during that time that require me
Yeah.
to be there. You know,
Yeah.
and even though they know that I'm
Yeah.
not available, maybe they just forget or whatever, and this happens. And I think one of the important things to do is 90% of the time, because that's going to happen, right? You're going to tell people, hey, look, I'm doing X from 4 to 5 every Wednesday night, and
Right.
someone's going to interrupt that time, and you
Yeah.
have to be able to say, listen, this, you got to be firm, this is my hour. Everyone
Right.
knows this is the hour. Of course there's going
Right.
to be times you have to be flexible,
Yeah.
but by and large, don't let people break into those times, because
Right.
once that habit starts, it gets very hard to break.
Yes. Yep. For sure. All right. Let's review. So step one is conducting that resistant audit. So think of the last 7 days, the things that you're doing in your calendar. Are there things that you've said yes to in the past that you don't really need to say yes to anymore, but you feel obligated? And then also always calculating the cost. There is a cost of saying yes, and sometimes there's a cost of saying no, and just understand that.
Number two, hell yeah or no,
I knew
right?
I wanted to leave that for you.
Hell yeah or no. If you are not excited about it, then the answer is no, right? Look at the trade-offs and learn how to say no with style.
And the last part is creating that protection zone. So block off times throughout your day, throughout your week that are important to you, that you get your best work done, or just something that's important. Eliminating the dawdle time. I love that word. Try to
Don't
eliminate that, and then also make sure people know about those times. So you broadcast the boundaries that you set up for the week.
Absolutely. So hopefully this podcast helps you say no to more things so you can say yes to more things that matter and that move the needle. Thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Hop over to our website at www.achieveresultsnow.com to get your free copy of our book, Ignite Results, 4 specific daily actions to help you achieve results now. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Achieve Results Now. Thanks for listening, commenting, and subscribing. Now get out there and achieve results now.